Hey everyone, I'm Steve, a volunteer director at large with the Vancouver Island Security Research Society. We're getting ready for BSides Vancouver Island, a community-driven cybersecurity conference happening Friday, September 25th, 2026 at the Victoria Conference Centre. This year is our 5th anniversary, and for the first time, we're proud to announce that we'll have 2 talk tracks with even more great content for the community. Today I'm joined by Ryan Smith, one of our speakers and a founding member of the Vancouver Island Security Research Society. Ryan is a senior security researcher at Microsoft. His work focuses on threat research, detection engineering, incident correlation, Microsoft Defender XDR, and applying AI to some of the messiest problems in cybersecurity. His talk is called The Control Plane Awakens: How Attackers Are Taking Over Network Edge Infrastructure. Firewalls and VPNs have always been important security targets, but today, network edge infrastructure does much more than control access. It can sit directly in the middle of identity, authentication, session management, and security policy. Ryan's talk explores how attackers are moving beyond using edge devices for initial access. They're increasingly treating them as long-term operational platforms, places where they can observe authentication, maintain persistence, and influence how trust is enforced across the enterprise. And when Ryan isn't investigating detection gaps or writing what is probably far too much Cousteau, you may find him coaching youth wrestling, fishing in the backcountry of British Columbia, or working on a side project that somehow becomes a 6-month commitment. Ryan, welcome. It's great to have you here and great to have you on this side of the interview table. To start, tell us a little bit about yourself and what drew you towards detection, engineering, and edge security.
It's weird to be on this side. Usually I'm hanging out with you doing all this type of work. So, it's funny to have this shoe on the other foot, I guess is the term. Yeah, what drew me into where I'm at now with detection engineering and XDR Microsoft? Long story. I've been in the industry a long time, as you know, like 20 plus years. Been here on Vancouver Island, most of that just grinding away. Was in security before it became a thing, and I got really into firewalls early in my career. Cisco picks firewalls were kind of the big ones, and I got, fell in love with the Cisco firewalls. But Checkpoint was a thing back then, and all of that. So that's kind of where I was starting my career. And I was working for a great company here on Vancouver Island as a director of security. And I think Microsoft got tired of me, always giving them suggestions of how they can improve their product. And I got kind of drawn into the dark side of working over at Microsoft in our security research org, specifically around XDR and Defender. So that's how I got my start into the space, and been kind of there ever since for the last 5 years, working on a lot of the detections that we see in XDR and Defender, some stuff in Sentinel, and trying to tell like a really good attack picture for our customers and clients so that it's not a big, effort to figure things out. My first SIM was ArcSight, and it was like the IKEA of SIMs. You kind of had to build it yourself, and it was always a little bit wobbly at times because you didn't tighten the right screw or put a panel on backwards. So, I love being able to build these for customers to bring that view in specifically. And now I'm taking kind of my XDR research and my passion for firewalls and kind of merging it together into some of the research that I've been looking at, kind of the frames to talk.
Well, that's great. And Microsoft is lucky to have you. Let's get this thing rolling. We've got a few questions that we have queued up, and you've agreed. Now, we're not going to give away the whole talk, but there we are. So your talk makes the point that attackers aren't just trying to break into edge devices anymore. They're trying to become part of the edge itself. What does that actually look like in the real world?
Yeah, when we started in the industry, and I remember like years ago, like if you could breach the firewall, you were in, that was like the cool things. I think, hack the firewall, or I had, people would always talk about having the unhackable firewalls. That was the joke. And then, when we were security professionals, we were doing pen testing and things like that. We were focused on compromising that firewall to get access to the network. And it was just an egress point. That's all it was. It was opening a door. Not even necessarily landing a beachhead per se. But now, years ago when we started in technology, when we had branch networks and we had all these different sites, we backhauled to a central data center. So we didn't have firewalls in all the branches. We didn't need to do authentication. We didn't want to have domain controllers everywhere in all of our sites. And firewalls kind of, a lot of the manufacturers of next gen firewalls kind of got attuned to this and started building in like authentication pieces there, so they could authenticate. They could do lots of different things, the VPN access, all of that. And they kind of become like this core piece of the infrastructure. And what we've noticed over the last couple of years in some of these attacks, especially from nation states, is that they are leveraging the firewall as the edge device as their control plane on the network. So they're injecting themselves, they're viewing all the traffic coming in and out in the network. They're creating accounts if it's got authentication abilities kind of built into that. They're authenticating, especially on the VPN, getting access to the VPN, and they're doing that or leveraging that VPN as a jump off point somewhere else. So they're living off the land in that respect, and they're using these firewall devices as them. And they're not necessarily compromising them through traditional means like we used to see with brute forces back in the day. It's a little bit different now in how the approach is. So that's kind of what we mean about like attacking that control plane.
Thank you. That's great. Definitely living off the land is something that we see more and more. Second question. Compromised firewalls and VPNs can give attackers visibility into authentication flows. You just spoke about that a bit. Sessions and network traffic. What can defenders miss when they rely mainly on endpoint and identity tools?
Yeah, I think that first really, other big tool that we had, in our toolbox when we, you and I started in the industry was, endpoint AV. We had that and we had our firewalls. Those were that was security then. But, as SIMs and XDRs have kind of evolved over the years, we're bringing in a lot of cloud telemetry. We're bringing in our, Defender, our like, DLP telemetry, our Microsoft Office or Google Apps telemetry. We're bringing all this telemetry now into our detection platforms. And one of the things is looking at, we take a look from a firewall perspective or an edge device perspective at the traffic that goes through. That's kind of our traditional monitoring. But we are often losing sight of actually monitoring the firewall itself. What is who's authenticating against it? What are kind of the file traversals or path traversals if it's interfacing? What's happening to that device? Are we logging that device at all? And I find actually a lot of customers and a lot of people that I know don't actually log that part of their aspect. They look like, yeah, I log the firewall, but you log the firewall traffic or you log what's happening going through that firewall. But are you actually checking to see if your firewall has been compromised or if somebody's trying to, run a remote code execution on it or something like that? Like that's what we're starting to see this gap happening. And when we're seeing these firewalls and these VPN services compromised, a lot of times they aren't monitoring that. And it does exist, but it's actually a gap that a lot of customers just fail to think about because they think, oh yeah, monitoring the firewall. Yeah, I'm monitoring traffic, monitoring, the firewall logs that we have, not necessarily the firewall itself or the edge device.
Yes, I'll be doing something after this interview. Number 3, for organizations that can't replace or completely redesign their edge security stack overnight, what is one detection or monitoring improvement that they could make this week?
I don't think a full stack redesign is needed for most organizations to cover this area. It's just looking at your coverage around detection. So, making sure that we're logging, activity on those firewalls, admin activity on those firewalls, even things simple restarts and updates, making sure we're just logging that and we're monitoring that actively and we're seeing that behavior. I remember a long time ago, you had to go to site to get to the firewall. Like you had to get in your car and drive to the site and plug it in and do your configurations. We hated it.
Did you bring your console cable?
Does your console cable work? Like you forgot the serial adapter, right? Like that was always the thing back then. But now, like, we kind of moved into having, support VNets and stuff like that to do that and air gaps. So then now a lot of these firewalls are connected to the internet, so, those doorways are there for the knocking and make sure that we just monitor them, and that's kind of the basic things of that, because when we've seen these device compromises, the tells have actually been pretty obvious in the log telemetry that we've analyzed on these devices.
Okay, that was great, Ryan. Thank you. Final question. This one's a bit of a bonus. Beyond the technical content, you're also one of the people who helped build the Vancouver Island security community. And I'll personally thank you for that. What advice would you give to someone who is thinking about attending their first conference or giving their first security talk? but isn't sure they belong.
That belonging is a huge thing of why we built this, is to make people feel belonging. And I remember our core group when we used to go over to the BSides in Vancouver. That's, shout out to Alex Dow and the crew that started that event, because that's in reality where our community was. We all felt attached to this Vancouver community. So Dom and Sandy and everybody, we'd be over on the ferries heading over to BSides Vancouver because we would coordinate it, and we would sit there talk like, hey, like I'd love to have, like, why can't we do this in Victoria? Like, I'm tired of taking the ferry. We love BSides Vancouver, the cool crew over there, but we have a lot of talent, a lot of really exceptional people here on Vancouver Island. So, it doesn't matter, I think, what your technical level is. If you're doing research at Microsoft in XDR, or if you're working a help desk for the government, like there's a place at BSides for you. We all weren't born experts. We weren't all born at these levels where we're at. We learned a lot of what I attribute my career successful to is BSides in general, be it Vancouver, Victoria, Seattle, Portland, a lot of these events that I've gone to, because of, I met all these great people, I've taken all these talks, and I have these connections in my friendship group. All of my best friends in technology come from BSides Vancouver Island. When we now hang up, we have a group up island now that we hang up with up here in Duncan, but so it's building that sense of community. But I think one of the great things that I've loved about the island scene is, I think, we have this island personality that's a little bit different, and we're always accepting of everybody. It doesn't matter who you are, is like, if you're coming into this for the first time, like, it is okay to be intimidated, because we have some absolutely brilliant people here on Vancouver Island, and one of those people I always think about is Tanya Janka. And I think most people in our industry know Tanya. I have the fortunate to be a friend of Tanya, and listen to her all the time. And she's a rock star in our industry, and we have rock stars in our industry at this conference. But don't be afraid to go say, "Hey, God, I don't fit in here. I don't belong because I'm not a rock star." Well, we're not all rock stars. We're all just here to, like, have fun, give back with zero ego, I think is the big thing, and be welcoming and just be yourself. We have it on our banner, just be awesome to each other. I think Bill and Ted said that in one of their movies, or be excellent to each other. I think that's the term that we use.
Yeah.
And I think that's what we have there. But yeah, just come and have fun, because it's and we've been really good this year that we have these double tracks. And I've been pushing for double tracks for years, is because I want to say, like, hey, like, if you want to go dive into AI and maybe some type of, like, memory attack, that's there for you. But if you're getting new in here and you want to learn, like, how to become a better security person, there should be a track there for you. And, like, that's the beauty about it. And if you're coming to speak for the first time, like, this is the first time that I've been so busy planning conferences that I haven't actually, put in my hat. And I put this talk in as the backup talk, as you remember, and you guys all dragged me kicking and screaming into delivering this one for everybody. But when the BSides movement started, many years ago, and Jack Daniels out of Las Vegas and all them, that original crew, it was meant for people who are just getting into this. Hey, like, I want them to deliver a talk, and, like, we've had people every year, we have somebody this is their first talk. And it's to build that confidence for themselves and that, and, like, yeah, sometimes you just stumble through talks. That's okay, because this isn't about, finding a $10,000 an hour speaker for BSides. This is about bringing the talent that we have here in Vancouver Island, the Pacific Northwest, to the forefront, and giving people that opportunity that may not be able to go to DEF CON, Black Hat or RSA to have a chance to talk. And that's why we built it. And this amazing community that we have, that you're part of as well.
Ryan, we'll leave it at that. Thank you so much for joining us and for giving us a preview on your talk and a bit of a background. I think attendees are going to leave with a very different perspective on what it means to secure the network edge, and also attend a BSides conference. If you'd like to hear the full session and join us in Victoria, visit bsidesvi.com to get your tickets. They're selling fast. And if you purchase your ticket before Monday, August 24th, you'll receive an exclusive custom-designed BSides Vancouver Island t-shirt in the size of your choice while supplies last. I know last year they flew off the back shelves, and we have another banger this year. Shout out to our other colleague, Tao. for designing that. You can also find links to all of our social channels on the website. Follow along, join the conversation, and use hashtag BSidesVI in your posts. We'll see you Friday, September 25th in Victoria.